Christmas Eve dinner at the family mansion. I sat at the long mahogany table, surrounded by my father, two brothers, their wives, children, and mother. The room glowed with candlelight and expensive decorations. My father stood, wine glass raised, about to make an announcement. I felt tension in the air. His eyes scanned the room, landing on my two brothers with pride, then on me with disappointment. The words came like a slap. "I've decided on the inheritance." "Johnny, you're not getting anything. Your brothers earned it." I quietly nodded and continued eating my prime rib. "Let me back up and explain how we got here. I'm Johnny, the youngest of three brothers. My father, Harold, is 67 years old and built a successful regional construction company worth approximately $12 million over 3.5 decades of relentless work. My oldest brother, Craig, is 38 and works as the chief financial officer in Dad's company. Hess married to Amanda, and they have two kids. My middle brother, Derek, is 35 and serves as vice president of operations, also in the family business. Hess married to Stephanie, and they have one son. Then there's me. I left home at 22 to pursue technology startups in California, and I haven't looked back. My mother, Patricia, is 64, a traditional homemaker who has always supported my father's decisions without question. Or so I thought. After Dad's announcement about the inheritance, the dinner continued in awkward silence for about 30 seconds. Then Craig smirked across the table at me. "Well, someone had to be the disappointment of the family," he said, cutting into his steak with exaggerated precision. Derek added, reaching for the wine bottle, "At least we stayed and built something real, not chasing Silicon Valley fantasies." Their wives exchanged knowing glances. I could tell this wasn't the first time they'd discussed my supposed failure. Amanda whispered something to Stephanie, and they both smiled in that way women do when they're being polite, but really thinking something unkind. My mother touched my hand sympathetically but said nothing to defend me. She never did. Dad launched into an elaborate speech praising Craig and Derek's contributions to the family empire. He detailed how they'd sacrificed personal dreams to carry forward his legacy. He talked about their loyalty, their dedication, their understanding of what it meant to be part of something bigger than themselves. The company just secured a $15 million contract for a new hospital complex downtown, Dad announced proudly. "That's because of the foundation these boys helped me build. That's what I call success. Real, tangible success." I kept eating, kept my face neutral. Inside, I was thinking about a lot of things. I thought about leaving home 10 years ago, with just $5,000 in my bank account, and a dream that everyone at this table had called foolish. I remembered my father calling me ungrateful for not joining the family business. I recalled the years of minimal contact, the phone calls where he'd ask, with barely concealed contempt, "Given up yet?" What my family didn't know was that I'd deliberately kept my success private from them. Every Christmas, I'd visit for exactly this dinner. I'd wear modest clothes from department stores, drive a rental car, stay in a hotel downtown instead of asking to sleep in my old room. I had my reasons. I wanted to see if my family would love me for who I was, not for what I had. I wanted to know if blood really was thicker than water, or if their affection was conditional on my conformity. So far, the answer had been pretty clear. "Johnny, you're awfully quiet," Amanda said, her voice dripping with false concern. "How's the tech support job going?" It never said I worked in tech support, but it also never corrected their assumptions. "Still in tech," I replied simply, taking another bite of mashed potatoes. "Must be hard," Stephanie chimed in, "watching your brothers do so well while you're still trying to find your footing. But everyone blooms at different times, right?" The condescension was suffocating. Craig's 12-year-old son, Tyler, sat next to me, quietly playing a game on his phone under the table. He was a good kid, curious and smart. He reminded me of myself at that age. back before I learned that my dreams weren't valued in this house. Suddenly, Tyler's eyes went wide as he stared at his screen. He looked up at me, then back at his phone, then at me again. "Wait," Tyler said, his young voice cutting through the adult conversation. "Uncle Johnny. There's a Johnny. No, it says Jonathan. Same last name as ours. On this Forbes list my friend just sent me." "Is that you?" The room froze. My fork paused midway to my mouth. My father's face turned toward Tyler with confusion and irritation at the interruption. Craig laughed nervously, the sound too loud in the suddenly quiet room. "That's ridiculous, Tyler. Put the phone away. It's Christmas dinner." But Tyler kept staring at the screen, then at me, then back at the screen. His mouth was slightly open in that way kids look when they're trying to process something that doesn't match their understanding of the world. Derek moved fast for someone. Who'd had 3 glasses of wine. He snatched the phone from Tyler's hand. "Let me see that." I watched Derek's face as he read whatever was on that screen. The color drained from his cheeks. His eyes widened. His hand holding the phone started to tremble just slightly. "What is it?" Amanda asked, her voice sharp with curiosity. Derek didn't answer. He just handed the phone to Craig without saying a word. Craig took it, and I watched the exact same transformation happen on his face. Amusement turned to confusion. Confusion turned to shock. Shock turned to something I couldn't quite identify. Disbelief, maybe, or fear. "What's going on?" my father demanded, his voice carrying that authoritative tone that had commanded construction sites for decades. Craig's voice shook when he finally spoke. "Dad, there's a Jonathan with our last name on the Forbes billionaire list." My mother gasped. "Billionaire?" Stephanie laughed, but it sounded forced and uncertain. "That can't be Johnny. He works in tech support or something, right? Tell them, Johnny." All eyes turned to me. I put down my fork carefully, wiped my mouth with the linen napkin, took a slow sip of water. Then I looked directly at my father. "I was going to tell you eventually," I said calmly. "Tell me what?" Harold's face was reddening the way it did when he was angry, or confused, or both. "That I built a company," I said. "That it went public 2 years ago. That the stock performed well." It was possibly the understatement of the century. My father stood up so fast his chair scraped loudly against the hardwood floor. "What company?" "CloudNext Systems," I replied. "We provide cloud infrastructure and cybersecurity solutions for enterprise clients." Craig had already pulled out his own phone, fingers flying across the screen. Derek was reading over his shoulder, both of them hunched over the glowing device like it held the secrets of the universe. "CloudNext," Derek read aloud, his voice hollow. "Acquired 3 major competitors last year. Stock up 400% since IPO. Current market cap." He trailed off, apparently unable to say the number out loud. "How much are you worth?" my father asked. It wasn't really a question. It was a demand. I met his eyes. "According to that Forbes list, approximately $3.7 billion. Complete silence. Someone dropped a fork. The metallic clatter seemed impossibly loud. My mother's wine glass tipped over. Red wine spread across the white tablecloth like blood, soaking into the expensive fabric. Nobody moved to stop it. Tyler was grinning at me, like I'd just told him I was secretly a superhero. Craig stood up suddenly, his face bright red. "You let us think you were a failure. For 10 years. Do you know how we talked about you? How Dad worried you were homeless." I nodded slowly. "I know exactly how you talked about me, Craig. I heard you tell Derek last Christmas that I was the family embarrassment and that you were relieved I stayed away most of the year." Craig's face went from red to white in an instant. Derek looked down at his plate. My father's hands gripped the edge of the table. "How did you hear that?" "The baby monitor," I said simply. "Tyler left it on in the living room. I heard everything you all said after I went to bed." You thought I was asleep in the guest room. I wasn't. I was standing in the hallway, listening to my family discuss what a disappointment I was. Amanda's hand flew to her mouth. Stephanie looked away. My mother started crying silently, tears streaming down her face. "You've known," Derek whispered. "This whole time, you've known how we really felt." "Yes," I said. "I've known." The revelation hung in the air like smoke. My family was realizing that I hadn't just kept my success secret. Id kept my knowledge of their betrayal secret too. For years, Id sat at this table, smiled at their condescension, accepted their pity, all while knowing exactly what they said when they thought I couldn't hear. My father sank back into his chair heavily, and for the first time I could remember, he looked old. Actually old. Not just aged, but worn down. The CEO of Apex Construction, who'd been at the table earlier, Jennifer Caldwell, had left already, but her words still echoed in my mind. It'd been protecting this family for years, and they had no idea. "I think you need to explain," my father said quietly. "From the beginning." So I did. I left home with $5,000. I started. Remember? You said it was all you'd give me because I needed to learn the value of money. I worked 18-hour days for 3 years straight. I slept in my car for 6 months to save money for server costs, instead of renting an apartment. My mother's crying intensified. My first big break came when I landed a contract with a mid-sized regional retailer. They needed a secure cloud solution, and I built it. The company grew slowly at first, then exponentially. We filled a niche that bigger companies were ignoring. Small to medium enterprises that needed enterprise-level security but couldn't afford enterprise-level prices. I paused, took another sip of water. We went public 26 months ago at $23 per share. The stock is currently trading at $97 per share. I own 41% of the company. Current company valuation is just over $9 billion. Craig was shaking his head slowly, like he could make the information untrue through sheer denial. "Why?" Derek asked. "Why stay silent? Why let us think?" "I called Dad when we got our first $1 million contract," I interrupted. "Do you remember what you said, Dad?" My father was silent. "You said, 'Call me when you have something real, not just promises.'" So I waited. I called again when we went public. Mom answered. "She said you were busy with Craig and Derek, planning the company expansion. She said maybe I could visit at Christmas." Patricia was sobbing now, her shoulders shaking. "I didn't know," she managed between gasps. "I didn't understand what you were saying." "I've visited every Christmas for 10 years, I continued. Wore clothes from Target, drove rental cars, stayed in hotels. Let you all think whatever you wanted to think. I was waiting to see if anyone would actually ask about my life. Really ask. Not just the polite "how are you" before changing the subject. Craig's defensive walls came up fast. "You could have just told us. Every single year at Christmas," I said, my voice level. "Someone asks what I'm doing. Every single year. I say, still in tech. Nobody ever asks more. No follow-up questions. Just polite nods and immediate subject changes, usually to talk about how well the family business is doing." Derek leaned forward. "We thought you were struggling. Why wouldn't you let us help?" The audacity of that question almost made me laugh. "Help," I repeated. "The last time I asked for help was 12 years ago. I needed a small loan to buy better equipment for my startup. $5,000. I came to you, Dad, in your office. I had a business plan printed out. Id practiced my pitch. Do you remember what you said?" My father's face showed he remembered perfectly. "You said no. You said I needed to learn about consequences, about what happens when you make foolish choices. You told me that if I wanted to waste my time on computers, I could do it without your money." I turned to Craig. "You made 30 times that in bonuses last year from the family company." Then, to Derek. You just bought a vacation home in the mountains for $400,000. Back to my father. But nobody thought to check if I needed anything. Nobody called to see if I was okay. Nobody asked if I had health insurance, or if I was eating regularly, or if I had a place to sleep. The guilt on their faces was almost satisfying. Almost. Tyler, who'd been quiet through all of this, suddenly spoke up. His voice was small but clear. "Uncle Johnny, help me." Everyone turned to look at him. "What?" Craig asked his son. "Last summer," Tyler continued, looking at his father nervously. "When you thought I was at regular camp, I was actually at a specialized coding program in Seattle. Uncle Johnny paid for it. $12,000. He set everything up, paid for it all, told me not to tell anyone because he didn't want credit. He just said I had potential and he wanted to help me explore it." Craig's face went completely white. "You what?" Tyler looked at me, and I nodded encouragingly. He took a breath and continued. "Uncle Johnny's been helping me for 3 years, since I was 9. He tutors me online every Sunday. He taught me Python and JavaScript. He answers my questions about computers and programming and business. He said I had a gift and he wanted to nurture it." Tyler's voice grew stronger. He said that's what family does. They help each other become the best versions of themselves, even if nobody else knows about it. Amanda started crying now, too. Craig looked like someone had physically struck him. I smiled gently at Tyler. "You didn't have to say anything, buddy." "Yes, I did," Tyler said with the fierce certainty only a 12-year-old can muster. "They need to know who you really are, not who they think you are." My father found his voice again, though it came out rougher than usual. "I built this business from nothing. 35 years of blood, sweat, and tears. I needed sons who would carry it forward, who would understand sacrifice." "You needed soldiers, not sons," I said quietly. "That's not fair," Harold protested. "Fair." I stood up now, unable to sit any longer. "You just told me 90 minutes ago that I'm not getting any inheritance because I didn't earn it. I don't need your inheritance, Dad. I never did. But it would have been nice to be valued for who I am instead of punished for not being who you wanted me to be." Craig interrupted, his voice angry and defensive. "This is ridiculous. You're a billionaire throwing yourself a pity party." "You're right," I said. "I should leave." I turned toward the door. "Sit down, Johnny." Everyone froze. It was my mother's voice, but different. Firm, commanding. In 35 years of marriage, I'd never heard her take that tone with anyone. "Harold, you sit down too," Patricia continued, standing from her own chair. My father actually sat, too shocked to argue. My mother stood at the head of the table, and for the first time in my memory, she looked powerful. Not just present, but actually powerful. "I have stayed silent for 35 years while you built your empire, Harold," she said, her voice steady despite the tears still on her face. "I stayed silent when you pushed Johnny away. I stayed silent when you mocked his dreams. I stayed silent when you turned his brothers against him. I am not staying silent anymore." "Patricia," my father started. "No," she cut him off. "You will listen. All of you will listen." She turned to me, and her expression softened. "Johnny, I need to tell you something. I knew. About your company. About your success." The room went completely still. "What?" I whispered. "I followed you online," Patricia said. 2 years ago, I created a Facebook profile under a fake name. I watched every interview you gave. I read every article about CloudNex. I joined investor forums. I learned about tech stocks and IPOs and market caps. Tears were streaming down her face again, but she kept talking. "And I own CloudNex stock. I've owned it for 2 years. Since the day of your IPO." My eyes widened. "Mom, I bought in on the first day," she continued. $100,000. Your father doesn't know. It's worth approximately $1.3 million now. Harold's face went through several colors. You did what? Where did you get that kind of money? From my inheritance, from my mother, Patricia said. Remember, Harold? The money you said I should invest in your company? The money you said would be safer in the family business. She looked at him steadily. I invested it in my son instead, in the son you gave up on. She turned back to me. I'm sorry I never told you. I was afraid. Afraid of your father's reaction. Afraid of causing fights. Afraid of disrupting the family peace. But I've watched you succeed, Johnny. I've watched you build something extraordinary. I've watched you give interviews where you talk about second chances and believing in people and taking risks. And I am so incredibly proud of you. I couldn't speak. My throat was too tight. Why didn't you say something? Derek asked, his voice barely audible. If you knew, why did you let us treat him like that? My mother's face crumpled with shame. Because I was a coward. Because I was so used to keeping peace that I forgot how to fight for what was right. Because I told myself that Johnny was strong enough to handle it, that he didn't need me to defend him. But I was wrong. Everyone needs someone in their corner. She walked around the table and pulled me into a hug. I hugged her back, and I felt 10 years old again, back when she used to hold me after bad days at school. I'm sorry, she whispered in my ear. I'm so sorry I wasn't braver. It's okay, Mom, I whispered back. It's not, she said. But maybe we can start making it okay now. Craig suddenly pulled out his phone again, and his face went gray. Actually gray. Dad, he said, his voice strange. The hospital contract. The $15 million one you mentioned earlier. Harold looked confused. What about it? I just looked it up. The hospital system, the one we're building for. They're using CloudNext systems for all their IT infrastructure. They have been for 18 months. Derek grabbed the phone, read the screen, and slowly looked up at me. Did you know about our bid? I nodded. I sit on the hospital board. Have for 18 months. I recused myself from the vendor selection process. But yes, I knew you were bidding. My father's voice was barely a whisper. You could have helped us win it. You won it on merit, I said firmly. Your bid was the strongest, the most cost-effective, the best timeline. I didn't interfere either way. I didn't help you, and I didn't hurt you. I looked at my father directly. But Dad, I could have killed that contract with one word. The board trusts my judgment on technology vendors. If it expressed any concern about your company's ability to deliver, they would have gone with someone else. I never said a word against you. That's what family means to me. The weight of that hung in the air. Craig's voice turned aggressive, his usual defense mechanism when he felt cornered. So what now? You want us to bow down? Apologize? Beg for scraps from the billionaire? I want nothing from you, I said simply. Liar, Craig spat. You came here to gloat, to show us up, to rub our noses in your success. I came here for Christmas, I replied, keeping my voice level. Same as every year. Well, congratulations, Craig said, standing up so fast his chair tipped backward. You win. You're richer than all of us combined. You're more successful than Dad ever was. You've got your revenge. Happy now. I stood too. I'm leaving. Wait. Derek's voice was different from Craig's. Quieter. More thoughtful. Just wait a minute. Can we please talk about this like adults? I paused, hand on the back of my chair. Derek continued, his voice careful. Johnny, I'm trying to understand. I really am. Why keep it secret? Why not share this with us? Why let us believe you were struggling when you were building an empire? Share what exactly? I asked. My success? Would it have changed how you treated me? Or would you have just wanted something from me? Derek opened his mouth, then closed it. Let me ask you a different question, I said. Derek, when was the last time you called me? Not at Christmas. Just picked up the phone to see how I was doing. Derek thought about it. I watched him mentally scroll through years of memory. I don't know, he finally admitted. Never, I said. The answer is never. Same question, Craig. When did you last call just to talk? Craig's jaw was clenched. We're busy. We have families, responsibilities. I have a company with 17,000 employees spread across 4 continents, I said. I'm on 6 different boards. I've donated $400 million to charity in the past 2 years alone. I speak at conferences. I mentor startup founders. But I'm never too busy to pick up the phone if family calls. The silence was damning. My father finally spoke, and he sounded exhausted. What do you want me to say, Johnny? That I was wrong? That I should have supported your dreams instead of trying to force you into mine? I don't want you to say anything you don't mean, I replied. I gave you everything growing up, Harold said. Good schools, a roof over your head, food on the table, opportunities. You gave me material things, I corrected gently. You never gave me belief. You never said I'm proud of you, unless I was doing exactly what you wanted, exactly how you wanted it done. I was preparing you for the real world, my father insisted. The world is hard. I was teaching you that. You were breaking me down so I'd give up and come work for you, I said. There's a difference between tough love and conditional love. That's not true, Harold protested, but his voice lacked conviction. Then why did you tell my college advisor I wouldn't amount to anything? I asked. Why did you refuse to co-sign my first apartment lease when I had the money for rent but no credit history? Why did you specifically tell Craig and Derek not to loan me money if I ever asked? Harold had no answer. Tyler spoke again, his voice cutting through the tension. Grandpa, is that true? You told people Uncle Johnny wouldn't succeed. Harold still didn't answer. Tyler's voice grew stronger. Because Uncle Johnny helped me when nobody else would. Last year, when I told you I wanted to learn programming, you said it was a waste of time. You said I should focus on business classes and prepare to work for the company someday. Craig winced. But Uncle Johnny said I should follow my interests. Tyler continued. He said the world needs people who love what they do. He said passion and skill together create excellence. Has been teaching me for 3 years. 3 years. And he never asked for anything. He never made me feel like I owed him. He just helped because that's who he is. Tyler stood up from his chair, walked over to me, and took my hand. They need to know who you really are, Uncle Johnny, not the person they invented in their heads. Amanda was openly sobbing now. Craig looked like he'd been hit by a truck. Derek put his face in his hands. I looked down at Tyler holding my hand and decided it was time. Time to tell them everything. There's more you should know, I said. The real reason I keep coming back, even when it hurts. Even when every visit reminds me that I'm not really part of this family the way Craig and Derek are. I pulled out my phone, opened my email app, found the folder, ED, labeled Family Business, and pulled up the documents. 3 years ago, Dad, your company almost went bankrupt. Do you remember? Harold's face tightened. We had a rough patch. Some contracts fell through, cash flow issues, but we recovered. You were going to lose everything, I said. The bank was going to foreclose on the business. You were 60 days from losing the company you'd spent 35 years building. Craig leaned forward. How do you know about that? I held up my phone. Because I'm the anonymous investor who bought your debt and restructured it. I own 49% of your company, Dad. The silence was so complete, I could hear the antique clock ticking in the hallway. Derek's voice came out strangled. That's impossible. I turned my phone screen toward them, showing the legal documents. Through a shell corporation called Summit Holdings. I've been your silent partner for 3 years. The reason your company not only survived but thrived? I've been using my connections to send contracts your way. That hospital job? I made sure you were invited to bid. The new development project on 5th Street? I introduced the developer to your company. The municipal contract for the new library? I'm friends with 3 city council members. Harold's face had gone completely gray. He looked like he might be sick. You own. Craig couldn't finish the sentence. 49%. I confirmed. I made absolutely sure you kept 51%, Dad. I didn't want control. I didn't want to take over. I just wanted the company to survive. I wanted your dream to stay alive. Patricia was weeping, her hands covering her face. Why would you do that? Derek asked, his voice breaking. After everything. After Dad rejected you. After we mocked you. Why would you save his company? Because he's my father, I said simply. Because it's his life's work. Because family doesn't abandon family, even when family abandons you. And because somewhere, deep down, I kept hoping that one day you'd all see me as something more than a disappointment. Harold's hands were shaking as he reached for his water glass. When he tried to speak, his voice cracked. Johnny, I know, Dad, I said quietly. You don't have to say it. But he did have to say it. I could see that he needed to. When I made that announcement tonight, Harold said, tears starting to fall, about the inheritance, about you not getting anything, I thought. I thought I was teaching you a lesson. I thought you needed to understand what it meant to build something, to earn something. I had no idea that you'd already built something bigger than I ever dreamed possible. He stood on shaking legs and walked toward me. I don't need an inheritance, I said. I never did. What I needed was a father who believed in me. Craig suddenly stood, pushing back from the table. I need air. I can't. I need a minute. Derek followed him out to the patio. Through the glass doors, I could see them standing in the cold December night, their breath visible in the air. Craig had his hands on his knees, like he might throw up. Derek had his hand on Craig's back. Amanda and Stephanie sat frozen at the table, looking at their empty plates like they might find answers there. Tyler still held my hand. He looked up at me with those wise 12-year-old eyes and said, I believe in you, Uncle Johnny. I always have. I squeezed his hand. I know you do, buddy. That's exactly why I help you. Because you see people for who they really are, not who you want them to be. 5 minutes later, Craig and Derek came back inside. Both of their faces were red and blotchy. They'd been crying. Craig walked directly to me. Johnny, I don't even know how to start apologizing. For years of everything. The comments, the jokes, the way we talked about you behind your back, the way we let Dad treat you, the way we treated you ourselves. Derek stood next to him. We called you a failure. We laughed at your tech dreams. We made you feel small. And all this time, you were. He couldn't finish. Following Dad's lead, I said. He set the tone. You just followed it. That's not an excuse, Craig said firmly. We're grown men. We made our own choices. We chose to be cruel. We chose to be dismissive. We chose to exclude you. Derek's voice was barely a whisper. Is there any way we can start over? Can we fix this? I looked at both of them carefully. That depends. Do you want a relationship with me? Or with my money? With you, Derek said immediately. I want my brother back. The brother I used to build forts with when we were kids. The brother who taught me how to ride a bike. I want that person back. If hell have me. Craig nodded, tears streaming down his face again. I want to know the real Johnny. Not the version we invented to make ourselves feel superior. I want to meet the man who built a $9 billion company. The uncle who secretly mentors my son. The person who saved Dad's business, even though Dad never believed in him. Before I could respond, there was a sharp knock at the front door. My mother, confused, went to answer it. She returned a moment later with 3 people. 2 men in expensive suits, and an elegant woman in her 50s, with silver hair and commanding presence. My father stood. "Who are you?" The woman stepped forward with the confidence of someone used to being the most important person in any room. "Mr. Harold, I'm Jennifer Caldwell, CEO of Apex Construction. These are my attorneys, Martin and Scott. We've been trying to reach you for 6 weeks about a buyout offer for your company." Harold looked confused. "I never received any offer." Jennifer's eyes moved to me, and she smiled slightly. "No, because your majority shareholder blocked us from contacting you directly, the one who owns 49% of your company." Everyone turned to look at me, Jennifer continued. "We've made several offers to Summit Holdings over the past 2 months, each one higher than the last. We've been negotiating with Mr. Johnny here, trying to convince him to approve a sale." She walked closer to the table, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor. "We've now raised our offer to $400 million for the entire company, Mr. Harold. You would receive $204 million for your 51% stake. Mr. Johnny would receive $196 million for his 49%. Craig gasped audibly. Derek grabbed the edge of the table to steady himself. Jennifer looked at my father with professional sympathy. "Mr. Harold, your son has been stalling us for months. When I finally managed to speak with him directly 2 weeks ago, I asked him why he wouldn't even let us present the offer to you. Do you know what he said?" My father shook his head mutely. "He said he needed you to hear the offer directly, to make your own choice, free of pressure from outside parties. He said that after 35 years of building your company, you deserve to make the decision about its future yourself, not have it made for you by a silent partner." She turned to me. "Most investors would have forced the sale. Most would have used their partnership position to push the deal through. Your son refused. He protected your right to choose, even though accepting the offer would make him nearly $200 million. Jennifer handed my father a leather portfolio. "This contains our formal offer. All the terms, conditions, and timeline. The offer stands for 48 hours. After that, well, move on to other opportunities." She nodded to her attorneys, and they turned to leave. At the door, Jennifer paused and looked back. "Mr. Harold, I've been in business for 32 years. I've met a lot of people. Your son is one of the best men I've ever had the privilege of negotiating with. Whatever you decide about the company, I hope you recognize what an extraordinary person he is." Then they were gone. The portfolio sat in the middle of the table like a bomb waiting to go off. Harold sank back into his chair, looking overwhelmed and older than his 67 years. He stared at the leather folder without touching it. $400 million, he said quietly. "For a company I built from nothing. A company that almost died 3 years ago." Craig's voice was hoarse. "Dad, you could retire, travel the world, live anywhere you want, do anything you want." Harold looked at me, and for the first time in my memory, there was no judgment in his eyes, no disappointment, just honest curiosity. "What do you think I should do?" The entire family froze. Harold had never, in 40 years of being a father, asked for my opinion on anything important. "What do you want to do, Dad?" I asked. "Not what's financially smart, not what Craig and Derek think you should do. What would make you happy?" Harold sat with the question for a long moment. The clock in the hallway ticked. Someone's phone buzzed. Outside, a car drove past with Christmas music playing. Finally, he spoke. "I'm 67 years old. I've built this company for 35 years. It's been my entire adult life. My identity. My purpose." He paused, looked down at his hands. "But I'm tired, Johnny. I'm so tired. My back hurts every morning. I can't remember the last time I took a real vacation. I missed Tyler's last 3 birthday parties because of work. I miss seeing my sons grow up because I was so focused on building something to leave them. His voice cracked. And when Tyler read that Forbes list tonight, do you know what my first feeling was? It wasn't pride. It wasn't happiness. It was fear. Fear that he'd lost you forever. Fear that he'd wasted decades building something that doesn't matter compared to having my son's respect. Dad, I started, but he held up his hand. Let me finish, Harold said. I told you tonight, you weren't getting an inheritance because your brothers earned it. But the truth is, they didn't build something new. They maintained what I built. They did good work, important work, but they followed a path I laid out for them. He looked at me with tears streaming down his face. You created an empire from nothing, $5,000 and a dream. You're a better businessman than I ever was, Johnny. You're more successful than I ever imagined possible. And instead of celebrating that, instead of being your biggest supporter and proudest father, I felt threatened. I felt small. I felt like your success somehow diminished mine. Patricia took Harold's hand, squeezing it tight. I should have been your champion, Harold continued. I should have told everyone about my brilliant son with his tech company. I should have asked questions and shown interest and believed in you. Instead, I became your biggest obstacle. I tore you down. I mocked your dreams. I turned your brothers against you. He looked around the table at Craig and Derek. And you still saved my company. You still helped my grandson. You still came home every Christmas, knowing how we talked about you, knowing how we felt. Why, Johnny? Why would you do that? I took a slow breath before answering. Because you're my dad. Because blood doesn't stop being blood just because it's hard. Because family isn't only about who supports you when things are easy. It's about who you choose to support even when it's hard, even when it hurts, even when they don't deserve it. I didn't help you for gratitude. I didn't save the company for recognition. I did it because I love you, all of you, even when you hurt me, even when you didn't see me, even when you made me feel like I didn't belong. Craig broke down completely, his head in his hands, shoulders shaking with sobs. Derek's face was wet with tears. We don't deserve you. Maybe not, I said gently. But that's not how love works. Love isn't transactional. It's not about deserving or earning. It's about choosing. Every day, I chose to love you. Even when you chose not to love me back. Derek stood up, walked around the table, and pulled me into a fierce hug. How do we fix this? How do we make this right? Craig joined the embrace. Both of my brothers, holding on like they were afraid I might disappear. You start by seeing me, I said, my voice muffled against their shoulders. Really seeing me. Not as the family, disappointment. Not as a billionaire. Just as your brother. As your son. Harold stood slowly, walked over, and wrapped his arms around all three of his sons. My mother joined in, and suddenly, we were all just standing there in a tangle of arms and tears and 30 years of pain starting to heal. Tyler, not wanting to be left out, squeezed into the middle of the group hug. This is what family is supposed to be, he said. I learned that from Uncle Johnny. When we finally broke apart, everyone was crying and smiling at the same time. Harold wiped his eyes and looked at the leather portfolio. I'm going to accept that offer. Craig started to protest. Dad, you don't have to decide right now. Take time to think about it. I've thought about it, Harold said firmly. For years, I've thought about it. I just wasn't brave enough to admit I wanted to stop. That I wanted to rest. That I wanted to spend time with my family while I still have time. He picked up the portfolio. I'm going to use the money to retire. I'm going to set up college funds for all my grandchildren. I'm going to travel with your mother to all the places we've talked about but never made time for. He looked at Craig and Derek. And I'm going to give you both enough to start your own ventures. Not to work for me. to build something of your own, to have your own dreams. Derek's eyes widened. Dad, you don't have to do that. I know I don't have to, Harold said. I want to. And Johnny, if you're willing, I'd like you to mentor your brothers. Not with money, just with advice, with support. The way you've been mentoring Tyler. I smiled. I'd like that. That's what brothers do. The next morning, Christmas Day, felt different than any Christmas I could remember. We all slept late. When we finally gathered for breakfast, Harold called Jennifer Caldwell and formally accepted the buyout offer. Over the next few weeks, the paperwork was finalized. Harold and Patricia used some of their $204 million to set up a foundation. They insisted on calling it the Second Chance Foundation over my protests. You gave me a second chance to be the father I should have been, Harold explained. Now, we're going to give other young entrepreneurs the second chances they deserve. The foundation would provide startup funding, mentorship, and support to young people with business ideas but no family backing. Especially people whose families didn't believe in them. Craig and Derek both decided to pursue their own ventures. Craig wanted to start a sustainable housing development company. Derek was interested in renewable energy solutions for construction. Both asked for my advice regularly, and I gave it freely. No money, just guidance and connections. Tyler continued his coding lessons with me, but now the whole family knew about it. Craig even started learning Python alongside his son, and they'd call me together on Sunday evenings. 6 months after that Christmas Eve dinner, we all gathered again, not at the mansion, but at a restaurant downtown. Wed decided to take turns hosting family dinners, rotating between different places, learning to be equals instead of following the old hierarchy. Amanda and Stephanie had both apologized privately for their part in making me feel excluded. Wed had long conversations about family dynamics and unspoken rules, and the courage it takes to question the status quo. My mother had used some of her Cloudnext stock profits to take an art class. Shed always wanted to paint, but Harold had told her it was frivolous. Now she had a whole room in the house dedicated to her studio, and she was actually quite talented. As we sat around the table that evening, Tyler asked me if I was working on any new projects. Actually, I said, I'm starting a new initiative at Cloudnext. We're going to provide free cybersecurity services to small family businesses. Help them protect what they've built. Harold looked at me with tears in his eyes. That's beautiful. Son. Son. Not Johnny. Not the youngest. Son. It was the first time Head called me that in over a decade. Craig raised his glass. To second chances. To family. Derek added. To choosing love. My mother said. We all clinked glasses, and for the first time in years, I felt like I truly belonged. Later that night, as I was leaving, my father walked me to my car, not a rental this time. My actual car, a modest sedan that I preferred to the sports cars people expected billionaires to drive. Johnny, he said, I've been thinking about something. What's that, Dad? That speech I gave at Christmas Eve dinner. About the inheritance. About you not earning anything. It's okay, Dad. We've moved past it. No, let me say this, he insisted. I was wrong. You earned everything you have. You earned it through courage and vision and determination. But more than that, you earned something I never earned. What's that? You earned the right to be proud of yourself without tearing anyone else down. You earned wisdom. You earned grace. You earned the ability to love people even when they don't love you back. He put his hand on my shoulder. That inheritance, that lesson, is worth more than any money I could ever leave you. I hugged him. Thanks, Dad. As I drove away that night, I thought about the journey that had led here. About the lonely years of building Cloudnext. About sleeping in my car. About the phone calls that never came. About sitting at Christmas dinners feeling invisible. And I thought about forgiveness. Real forgiveness. Not the kind where you forget what happened, but the kind where you choose love anyway, where you decide that the relationship matters more than being right, where you give people the grace to grow and change. My father spent decades building a $12 million company. I built a $9 billion company. But the most valuable thing either of us ever built was what we started building that Christmas Eve. A real family. A healthy family. A family based on love instead of obligation. On acceptance instead of conditions. On grace instead of judgment. Success isn't measured in Forbes lists or bank accounts. It's measured in reconciliation, in second chances, in having the courage to forgive and the humility to ask for forgiveness. It's measured in the relationships we repair and the love we choose to give, even when it's not returned. Dad's inheritance was never the money. It was the lesson that pride can blind you to what matters most. My inheritance wasn't the company shares or the billions. It was learning that you can be powerful and still choose kindness. You can be successful and still choose grace. You can be hurt and still choose love. That's what it means to be family. Not the DNA, not the last name, but the daily choice to show up, to forgive, to believe in each other, and to build something together that's worth more than any fortune. And that's a lesson worth more than all the money in the world. Now I want to ask you something. Have you ever been in a situation where your family or loved ones didn't believe in your dreams? How did you handle it? Did you give up? Or did you keep pushing forward? Share your story in the comments below. I'd love to hear about your journey. If this story moved you or taught you something valuable, please hit that like button. It helps more people find these stories, and maybe, just maybe, helps someone else feel less alone in their struggles. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. We share stories like this regularly. Stories about real people, facing real challenges, and finding their way through with courage and grace. Finally, if you know someone who needs to hear this message, someone who's struggling with family expectations or feeling like they're not enough, please share this video with them. Sometimes we all need a reminder that our worth isn't determined by other people's opinions, and that choosing love, even when it's hard, is always the right choice. Thank you so much for listening to Johnny's story. May you find the courage to pursue your dreams, the grace to forgive those who doubt you, and the wisdom to know that your value comes from who you are, not what others think of you. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.